Hello everyone and welcome back. It's high time that Sam went on record again. And after introducing you to some of my favorite records and my guilty pleasure movies, one question that came up was, well, what are your favorite movies? And of course, as we all know, that's a tough question. So I went through my collection and I came up with 10 plus 2 movies that are among my favorites. First of all, the honorable mentions. One of my favorites and a movie I can watch over and over again is the beautiful adaptation of William Shakespeare's play Romeo and Juliet by Franco Zeffirelli, starring Leonard Whiting, Michael York and Olivia Hussey. This is really a beauty to behold, just in terms of its music, its images, the beauty of the main actors and actresses, and Franco Zeffirelli's sense for making a truly contemporary version of Shakespeare's drama. Another honorable mention is 12 Angry Men by Sidney Lumet, starring Henry Fonda. This courtroom drama of 12 jurors who have to decide about the guilt or innocence of a young man of Puerto Rican background is really a great example of what a tight script can do and how a confined space can really also work out well for a movie. Originally written for television, this is really beautifully made for the cinema as well, and Sidney Lumet, who was very famous of working very closely with his actors and actresses in preparation, has really made a masterpiece. Number 10. Again, Sidney Lumet is the director of this movie, Network. It's a satire about a TV movie station with one of the anchors who announces one night that he is going to kill himself in front of a live television camera. At first they want to take him off the air, but then he becomes hugely popular and he turns into some kind of prophet of doom. And the television network is realizing they can make big money off of him. And especially one female reporter who's very career-oriented, played by Faye Dunaway in a spectacular fashion, is very, very keen on keeping him on air. And what follows is a very funny, tragic, bittersweet media analysis that is still so relevant today. My number 9 is Les Choses de la Vie, the 1971 love story starring Michel Piccoli and Romy Schneider. I've already talked about the soundtrack album by Philippe Sard of this movie that tells the story of a man who gets into an accident, and then we as an audience get to know his story before the accident in reverse and in flashbacks. It's beautifully made, it's poetic in the way it's put together and assembled and scored, and also it's one of the great classics starring the dream couple of 1970s French cinema. I'm very touched by this movie every time I watch it, and it somehow really captures somewhat the essence of a life or of some aspects of life that we all know. Number 8 is Gus Van Sant's biopic Milk, starring Sean Penn as Harvey Milk, the gay rights activist who was not only popular in San Francisco, where he was elected into office as the first openly gay man in the 1970s, but of course also across the US, where he sparked controversy and admiration, and then he became an icon that became well known all around the world, who stood in for gay rights at a time when that was not popular and still very much debated, not only in the US. It's a very tragic story, but at the same time, of course, the basic motto of Harvey Milk, giving people hope, is running through all of the movie. It came out at a time when the US under Obama was just entering a new phase of discussing gay rights, and I'm pretty sure that because of the popular appeal of this movie, the story of Harvey Milk became popularized and must have supported the cause for more gay rights, so that in the second term of Obama, then gay marriage was finally legalized in the United States by the Supreme Court in 2015. Number 7, The Clouds of Sils Maria by Olivier Assayas. A mystery of a movie starring Juliette Binoche and Kristen Stewart. A mystery of a film in the sense that we don't quite know what of it is real, what of it is imagined, and at the same time he also reflects on what it means to become older, being an actress, what it means to be in a type of a competitive relationship, both with Juliette Binoche's assistant and with a younger actress that's supposed to play the role that she used to play as a young woman. And the whole movie is captured in beautiful images and also features the famous Maloya snake weather phenomenon, which becomes the centerpiece of this intriguing movie. My number 6 is one of the great 1970s thrillers from Great Britain by Nicholas Roeg called Don't Look Now. Again, I've talked about Pino Donagio's soundtrack for this film already from my record collection, but I also love this movie. It was originally introduced to me by my parents who had seen it under its German title, Wenn die Gondeln Trauer tragen, and it's the adaptation of a Daphne du Maurier short story about a couple who lose their daughter in an accident, and then they go to Venice, on the one hand for the husband to work on the renovation of churches, and of course on the other hand to get over the loss of their daughter. They encounter a Venice that is haunted in many ways, both by a murder on the loose and by reflections and memories of the couple who try to get over their daughter's death. They also encounter a couple of psychic sisters, one of which tries to tell them that she has seen their dead daughter as a type of a vision. And while the wife would like to believe that this is true, the husband becomes more and more skeptical. And its skepticism is at the center of this movie, who then becomes something between terribly frightening and really, really poetically beautiful. Especially if you like Venice and you'd like to see it at a time when there's hardly any people around and winter is coming and all the hotels are closing down, this movie really fantastically captures the atmosphere and is one of the scariest films that I know. Number 5, the most recent film that I have on my list, Call Me By Your Name. It's the gay love story between young Elio and the house guest Oliver. They live at Elio's parents' house together one summer in Italy in 1983, and they fall in love very, very slowly. And based on a book by Andre Aciman, that's also a fantastic read, this movie really beautifully captures the process of falling in love and realizing that the other is also returning those feelings. Filmed in northern Italy, in Bergamo and in Crema, among other places, this is really a great adaptation of the book, but also at the same time one of the great love stories, gay love stories, which was hugely popular, not just for a gay audience, but also for people all around the world who felt that this movie really captures perfectly those feelings of falling in love and doesn't know any taboos about the topic. My number 4 is Polanski's lesser known 1976 psychological thriller, The Tenant, starring Polanski himself as the tenant who moves into a strange dark house in Paris and then gets to know his neighbors and realizes that either he himself is going crazy or the house around him. He moves into the apartment of a woman who has thrown herself out of the window and slowly realizes that his story is linked to this. It's kind of a very dark version of Hitchcock's Rear Window, another great favorite of mine. I think Polanski really captures the alienation that someone as an immigrant feels coming to Paris at the time. The sets that were built for this movie are absolutely fantastic, and I'm in awe about the music, the atmosphere, and just the sheer paranoia that he built in the course of this movie. Starring as a couple of great supporting characters played by Isabelle Adjani or Joe Van Fleet or Shelley Winters, this is really a grimly fascinating tale of isolation and of losing your mind. Number 3, Hannah Sisters was produced in 1987, stars Mia Farrow in the title role, Michael Caine, Barbara Hershey, Diane Wiest, Woody Allen himself, Max von Sydow, and many others. Hannah and Her Sisters is the story of 3 sisters with a slight reference to Chekhov, Ibsen, and Bergman, and we get to know their lives between different Thanksgiving celebrations where they get together. And this whole collection of stories is really where Woody Allen's strength comes out the most, where he has great female characters, a lot of great comedy, but also that serious element. And I think Hannah and Her Sisters, together with its great soundtrack, somewhere between jazz and classical music, is probably his greatest achievement in putting together such a wide variety and such a wealth of his filmic genius. Number 2, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, the 6th movie of the James Bond series, starring one-time Bond George Lazenby and my favorite Bond girl, Diana Rigg, also starring Telly Savalas and Gabriele Ferzetti and Ilse Steppert. It's kind of a unique Bond story. He falls in love, he quits his job, and it's also one of those films that has absolutely great action sets, but at the same time also an interesting story. And my number one, Vertigo, the 1958 thriller by Alfred Hitchcock, starring Kim Novak and James Stewart. The story of the retired police detective Scotty Ferguson, who suffers from vertigo, and the woman he's supposed to follow really captures the audience by pulling them first of all into the mystery and then into the deceit of this plot. There was always something fascinating and riveting about Vertigo, and I've always come back to it. I always find the combination of the elements of music, of cinematography, of story writing, of acting, and how the whole thing is put together really makes it my all-time favorite movie. So, what are some of your favorites now that I've introduced you to mine? Leave me some in your comments as usual, and here's hoping you'll tune in again when Sam goes on record.